This is the 6 Go podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. My name's Tom Campbell, joined by Damien Seabold to do our 2023 Canberra Raiders review. Now, Siebes, this is a team that I think both you and I have a massive circle around heading into this year because clearly they overachieved in 2023.
Well, first of all, morning, Tom. Mate, I agree. I think the first thing that stood out for me, having a look at the ladder just before we jumped on to do the podcast today, was their for and against. How on earth can someone be negative 137 and make the finals? You know, teams at 9, 10, 11, and 12 were all in the positive. So, yeah, I don't know. When the Raiders got beaten, they got absolutely hammered. And then when they were winning, they were only winning, by a small margin. And arguably their best player, the best player they've had for the last decade, is now gone. So, there's some things that are going to be interesting this year.
I don't think it's all doom and gloom for the Raiders from a long-term perspective, but in the short term, I think that they're definitely going to cop a hit. You mentioned Jack White in there. He's leaving, obviously. And whenever they did get up, quite often it was off the back of some Jack White and brilliance to get them in a position to win the game. But they do have some youngsters there that I think are really exciting, like Matt Tomoko is one. I know he's probably going to miss a bit of the start of the season due to that tackle at the end of last year, but he's a really exciting player.
Yeah, look, he goes fine. He goes okay. Raiders have got a number of players, in my opinion, that I don't have a massive rap on, but they're decent footy players. So, when you've got a whole heap of them, it puts together a good squad. When you've got some elite players like Joseph Tarpany and Jack White, which they had last year, then it complements those players. I think the biggest issue that they're going to have moving forward, and the biggest issue they had last year, was their halves, hooker, and fullback. I really think that they're deficient in those areas, and look, I don't think they've signed anyone that are going to improve those spaces. And when you consider Whiten is gone, I know he played a little bit of centre during the year as well. I disagree. I can't see the Raiders getting out of the bottom four next year.
Oh, I agree from a short-term perspective.
Yeah, okay.
Because the fact of the matter is, you can't say with a bullet who's going to play fullback, who's going to play dummy half, and who's going to be your halves combination.
Yeah, and when you consider Josh Papali'i, who has been a star and will go down as one of the best forwards that the Raiders have ever had, an Origin great, he's getting older, slower, and bigger by the day. So I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play at such a high level. They're going to have to start to limit his minutes to get the effectiveness in him, or get him super rock hard fit again. Again, they're very fortunate that they do have Tarpany. They've got Corey Horsburgh, who goes quite good. So they've got some decent forwards there. Elliot Whitehead's another year older. So again, Elliot Whitehead's a star. He's an excellent international rugby league player, but he's aging. At a certain point, guys like Whitehead, we've seen it with Kurt Capewell, they do start to really fall away compared to what their lofty standards had been in the past.
The writing was on the wall for them at the back of the season. So they beat West Tigers 22-18, and the way the Tigers were going, that was a pretty ordinary win, to be honest. Then they got towed up by Melbourne 48-2. Then they struggled to beat the Bulldogs, who were conceding about 40 points a game at the time. Like their defense was an absolute enigma. It was nothing. And then they did have a spirited effort against the Broncos, but I think the Broncos had one eye on the minor premiership that night, and on the finals that night, because they certainly took their foot off the gas at the start of that game.
They're also a bit of a bogey team for the Broncos. They always make it tough for them. So that's one of the things there, I suppose, that we need to keep in mind.
For sure. And then they got Cronulla back into form heading into the finals with a win. And then their best performance out of their probably last 10 weeks was in the final against the Knights. And the Knights had won a lot in a row at the time, and they come into that game off some red-hot form. Callum Ponga playing out of his mind. And look, to be fair, they put up a great effort that day.
They did. And the more we're talking and the more we're, looking at things retrospectively, a number of good teams probably underperformed, which enabled Canberra to sneak into the eight last year. I just can't talk myself out of the fact that I think they're a rubbish footy team. I really do. Um, Rapana is a 32, 33-year-old lottery. He tries hard, he rips in every week, but you never know if he's going to get suspended, sent off, score a try, drop the footy, make a 50-meter break. Seb Chris is a centre playing at fullback. Matt Tomoko goes okay. Their other wing spot, they chopped and changed all year. Their halves are unsettled. As I said, Whitehead's another year older. Tarpany's unreal. Corey Horsburgh goes good. Papali'i's good. Outside of that, I really struggle to see too many bright spots. KO Weeks is moving there. I don't know what position he is. He could be a good footballer. He's shown some ability, but again, the opportunities he got in the halves for Manly last year, he was very underwhelming. I think he's probably more of a fullback than a half. And he's pegged to play in the halves as a starting six for them in round one. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm being very negative at the moment, but there was not one thing that I enjoyed about apart from Tarpany, not one thing I enjoyed about the Raiders last year.
They remind me a bit of the Steelers in the NFL. The Steelers in the NFL have no offense whatsoever, and whenever they win games, their plan in hindsight was just, we're just going to bash you, and that's going to be it. So
Yeah,
like whenever they win games, you go, man, they were really physical today,
they've
Canberra.
they've
They got
just
up for
bashed
this
them, and
game.
you can't do that every week. Or it's when Tarpany's got his late offloads going, and they get that momentum, and Jack Whiten can react off the back of it. Well, they don't have Jack Whiten anymore, so. Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough year for Raiders fans. And I want you to come back and bring this vision back up, this audio back up in September when they're sitting fifth.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I lie. There is another thing that I love about watching the Raiders. I love
Yes,
watching Ricky Stewart.
yes.
I do love
Ricky's
watching
entertainment
Ricky.
in itself.
Ricky's great. Ricky's great.
You and I have spoken about the top 12, and you can
Yeah.
talk about the ladder all you want, but to me, there's a top 12 between the teams who can make the eight and then the rest. I personally don't think that Raiders are in the top 12 this year.
No.
It would be a remarkable effort for them to make the eight this year.
No, I agree. It'd be a coaching masterclass from Stewart, which he probably doesn't get enough credit for what he did with them last year, getting him into the eight. Because it was a great effort for them to finish where they did. Um, I do think you're right. There's going to be 12 teams that are significantly better than the other five. However, as time goes on, I think we're not going to see such a clear gap between one and two and the rest. I think that group of 12, it wouldn't shock me if anyone within that 12 was in the top four. Penrith are losing players every year. Yes, Nathan Cleary's still there. They're still going to be top four, in my opinion. But can they continue to perform at the high level that they do every year when they're losing so many players? Will they go from being so much better than everyone to just in that group of top four teams? I think Brisbane are going to really come back to the pack a little bit. Now, again, they could easily finish in the top four. However, they are losing four starting players from their side. You
That's
lose
right.
four starting players from any side, it's going to hurt. So, there's going to be some issues there. Things are going to be interesting. I just think that the eight in particular is going to look a lot different to what it did this year.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. And what the runs that the Roosters and Melbourne went on in the mid 2000s, where every year they were in the top four and they would lose players. That's the
Yeah.
anomaly. That's not the rule. Like that's a
Well, and look, this will be the fifth year that Penrith have done it. So it's not like it's just been a couple of years. They made, yes, it is. It's the fifth year where they've been sitting realistically head and shoulders in the top two teams or significantly better than everyone. And if they do it again, well, in my mind, they're already on par with what Storm and Roosters did during those years. And
yeah.
Manly, if you go back 15 years ago, they've done what those teams did. Even those teams had a dip for a year or two before they come good again. Well, Melbourne's probably the only one that did continually regenerate themselves a year or two of, you know, just being a top six team, and then they'd be top two again.
Yeah, exactly. And the Raiders, it's really tough because they've got. You are right. They've got a group of young players there coming through the Raiders. I understand that their juniors actually won the competition. I think last year they won the competition.
The
Uh,
night,
so
yeah.
so they do have some good juniors coming through, but no stars. And I use the word stars a
Yeah.
little bit loosely there. I thought Xavier Savage was going to come on and tear them apart this year,
Bit
but a couple of
bit
injuries
bit
along the
slight,
way,
I think. Yeah,
maybe a bit of
bit light.
yeah. So I still hold out a bit of hope for Xavier Savage that he'll get another chance. But
Um,
as far as X Factor, there's not a lot there.
no, not from the outside looking in. Again, there could be one or two stars in that 19s that we're not aware of. Young Strange, I think it's Ethan Strange. He is a star. He's got a lot of Bradman best about him. Um, uh, but the other thing too, which I think we overhype in regards to footy, is star juniors and star junior teams, because realistically, the majority of kids that are stars at 17, 18, 19, unless they're Payne Haas or Fafita or, that freakish man child, they don't kick on. They don't really do anything. And I think the proof is in, I don't know about you, but in my social media a lot lately, I've seen just constant articles around, I think it's Code Sports are doing it, around all the different Australian schoolboys players and the different schools that have had Australian schoolboys players and how many they've been, and what all the teams are. Considering that most of these guys are 18, if you go through and have a look at the Australian schoolboy sides from every single year, more players don't kick on and play first grade than what do, let alone become stars in first grade. So, I think we do get carried away a little bit at times with how good junior systems are or how good junior teams are, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what's happening until you're 2021.
And that's exactly right. And when you're in those young teams too, it and I mean this respectfully, the players that are involved in the team that have a lot of success can get carried on further beyond their ability.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
they might make it a lot further than other people who are more talented than them, purely just based on the team that they were in was fantastic. So they must be a big
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah, and then you've got the guys who just get there and kick on, just a pure work ethic. And again, don't get me wrong, there's a quarter of a third of every one of those teams are full of players that went on and played plenty of first grade and were stars. It's just, I think our point is, just because you've got a good junior team doesn't mean it's going to translate to success in first grade as a team or a player. So, you know, Raiders have got to make sure that they keep the right ones and move on the ones that may have already peaked or don't have too much of a future. And it's a guessing game at times. And, you know, we spoke in the Melbourne season review about how good Frank Panisi's been with getting the right aging player or the right young gun at the right price. A bit of luck's got to be involved as well.
I'm going to throw something out there, and it might seem a little bit crazy for a team that just made the eight. We both don't expect the Raiders to make the eight in 2024. Are they a spoon contender?
Gee, they're going to have to be bad to beat the Tigers. Like, because I think the Dogs are rubbish, but they're going to be a little bit better. So,
Stephen Crichton
yeah,
adds
they'll be
a
thereabouts.
crazy
Yeah, of
amount to
course
them.
he does. He does. Kick out fit adds a crazy amount to them.
Yeah.
Dragons are going to be better. They've got a couple of good signings. Yes, they've lost a couple of halves, so that is going to hurt them. But I would expect them to be better. And again, when we spoke about the Dragons season, when you look at it, they had so many games that they only just lost. They were in most games, so it's not like they were a pathetic side. Um, Dolphins, I think they'll be about the same. They probably won't win as many games in my opinion. So
I
that
think
leaves for me
the
Tigers.
Dolphins for me are clearly better than the Raiders this year. Clearly better. The additions of Farnworth and the additions of
Yeah,
Flegler
that
as
helps a
well.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they've
And
still got aging Bromwiches. They've still got aging Kafusi, who will get carried this year. And again, they're going to have two or three games where they're outstanding, but they're going to have a lot of games where their age really shows.
that to me, that's less problematic in the forwards. If you've got aging forwards, that's one thing. But if you've got aging spine players who aren't
Slow
providing
back
anything,
or slow outside backs, yeah.
yeah. And
Farnworth's going to be great for the Dolphins.
yeah, the hammer as well. Like
Yeah,
they've got X factor in their side who can score points from anywhere. I don't see that with the Raiders. Who's the guy when you're coaching against the Raiders
yeah.
this year? Who's the guy you're circling and go, oh, we have to shut this bloke down, otherwise we're screwed? There's no one.
Jack White.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
no
yeah, it's Tarpany, isn't it? If Tarpany's not creating offloads and late offloads, I don't see where too much attack is going to come from.
yeah. Part of me thinks that they are a spoon contender, and I just think that the Tigers. I don't expect the Tigers to be good, but I could see the Tigers being better than the Raiders.
On their squads, like realistically, they're probably on par, would you think?
I would think that the Tigers have a slightly better squad at for 2024. I'll say if
For
I'm
20 for
investing,
2024, well, yeah, they're definitely in the hooker role. Coruscant's good. Their forwards, well, both have got aging Poms.
yes,
Both have got a couple of young props that go well. I think Tarpany's, definitely the best player in those two teams combined. Um, Outside
well,
back wise,
but
Tigers don't really have much. Hey,
Dream Buller is by far the best outside back in both teams, in my opinion.
Buller's good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, he is. I agree.
if you were doing a list of the top 5 players across those two squads,
Well,
Tarpany's
then
definitely in
it's
there.
going to come down to coach. He is. I think he's the best player out of
Yeah,
the two squads. Coruscant's probably second best.
that's right. And I could argue that the Tigers probably have 2, 3, and 4 like in their squad over the
Yeah, but
Raiders.
they definitely have got
And I get that. And
22 to
we're
30.
talking about two teams who could be in the bottom 4 here. We're not talking about premiership contenders.
Definitely. And my other argument was about to be then if they're pretty similar on paper, what does it come down to? Well, I'm confident that Ricky Stewart's going to outcoach Benji.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. That's our Raiders.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so to answer the question, yeah, Raiders will be there thereabouts, but they may not be the spoon.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And just last point on that. It's a good point that you raise. We mentioned before that Raiders sometimes just get up and bash a team. They do it to Melbourne all the time.
Because Ricky's a lunatic.
Because Ricky's a lunatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right.
He's been an NRL coach for going on 25 years now, and he very rarely misses the 8. He's had success. He's made lots of grand finals. He's won comps. He is a good coach. So, and he's proven. Benji might be a good coach. We don't know yet.
Yeah, and there is, and Benji will learn this along the way. There are certain things that Ricky would do at training or on game day to get a spark out of the team. Yeah. And that could get them 2 or 3 wins throughout the year. Just the coaching
Definitely. Just his blow up, the way he snaps or can get him passionate about something.
Exactly. Could be a bit of a retooling year for the Raiders though in 2024. That's our season review for the Raiders in 2023, and this has been the 6 Go podcast, and that is full time.